Yitzchak Chaim, you were not there last night. You said you apologized. So Ellie, you were the only one there. I don't mind that we've gotten smaller. I'm certain, and I almost, I suspected this might happen. Learning a safer like this is not as catchy. People, it doesn't grab people. It's fine.
Also, some people are starting new things. Like for me, I know in about 2 weeks, I probably won't be able to make Shiur because.
I see. Because you're saying this summers, people really do have involvements during the summer.
Right.
Fine, great. I'm glad that people are busy.
Like his thing,
Fine, very good. Okay, well, we'll take this as long as we take it, and then we'll stop. Meanwhile, it's great. It's very deep, and we're in the middle of. We are in the first chapter, the 5th brisa, which we learned that a person should make a fence around the Torah, and it's a basic safeguard idea. We learned that Kadosh Baruch Hu did so. It's a little bit, that was a complicated bit, but essentially he anticipates that since he promised the Jews will come into Eretz Yisrael, well, if and when he'll ultimately bring a Churban bring about the destruction, well, then the Kofrim, the naysayers, are going to come and say, oh, well, Hashem broke his promise, he wasn't strong enough, and all kinds of other terrible insinuations. So he actually predicts the whole thing, which is his way of making a safeguard, right? He took measures to protect the credibility of his promises in human eyes by saying, well, there's a caveat in this promise that if you don't keep the deal's off. So that's all part of the package. So essentially, it's a variation of, he's really preparing this carefully in advance. Ezu Chacham, this is the Gemara, this is not the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Haroes and Nolad, somebody who sees the long-term, obviously Hashem sees everything, but a person who sees the long-term ramifications of his actions, his words. And we left off last night, it is, if you're looking for it and you have it, mine are nicely sectioned off by paragraphs. I would think in most versions there would be a new paragraph here. There's one essentially first paragraph that's only a small portion of this brisa, and then it starts with Adam. What was the fence that Adam built? And interesting, this is a long one. It's going to take some time to develop. It's great. It's going to be somewhat familiar, and it's going to add material to what you thought you knew about what happened in Gan Eden with the fall of Adam and Chava. That's what we're doing tonight. But there's a lot of new material, and this is lengthy and fascinating. And one thing I have to say, in contrast, the fence that Hashem built was purely good. Obviously, everything Hashem does is purely good, and therefore an example. This fence that Adam built was intended to be good and got complicated. And we'll have to see what went wrong in the building of the fence. Eitan?
This might have been asked yesterday, I'm not sure, but is there a reason Eov is singled out here? In the paragraph before?
Yeah, the Bryce is eventually going to get to him.
Okay.
Yeah, it's taking its good old time. Avos Rabbi Nosson, as spare and as brief as Avos is. Avos Rabbi Nosson, this is like Chazal's greatest hits almost. There's a lot of really fundamental, familiar ideas. It's sometimes it overlaps with other famous midrashim that we know or other Chazals. And it adds, and there's a lot that's fresh and original and only in Rabbi Nosson and Avos Rabbi Nosson and extremely important. So here's what we learn about Adam. Ezu siag she'asa Adam rishon ledvarav. What kind of fence did Adam make around his words? Procedurally, how we do this. In Eov, we had a large variety of people. I felt if we were to do the Hebrew, it would be deadly for some of them. So I just went automatically to the English, a little bit against my grain, but I think it was the correct thing to do for the audience. And here I've been reading the Hebrew, also gauging my audience. Is that right? We're on board with that, or you prefer I just did the English? Any opinions?
I like to improve my Hebrew skills, so.
Great. So I think so too. I think this is the way it works. The more you hear, the more you become fluent. Suddenly, these expressions just come naturally out of your mouth, and sometimes you think, "How did I know that?" You hear it enough, it starts to become part of you.
Also, this isn't nearly as complicated as you.
What?
Yes, the grammar here isn't nearly.
Also true, and plus we're
And
dealing
also,
with.
if I'm not following, which is often the case, unfortunately, then it really helps if you're reading the Hebrew. No, but their method's actually very helpful. Like don't let there be any mistakes. I think it's perfect.
Right. It's not only easier than Eov, but it's familiar. So I mean, again, there's a lot of fresh new material, but there's a lot of material that we kind of know or it's vaguely familiar. Here's what we learn about Adam. So right, Harei hu omer vayitzav Hashem Elokim al ha'adam lemor. The pasuk says that Hashem commanded man mikol eitz hagan achol tochel, of every tree of the garden you may eat freely. But the tree of knowledge of good and evil, you should not eat from it. From the day you eat of it, you will definitely die. What did Adam do? Adam, the first man, didn't want to tell Chava the Isser in the same way that Hashem did. So he told him by prohibiting, Hashem only said, don't eat, and nothing else. Rather, he told her, making a fence around his words, saying more than what Hashem had said. He said, the fruit of the tree that is in the center of the garden, Hashem has said, don't eat from it and don't touch it lest you die. Uh-oh. Now he meant well, because if you don't touch, it's going to be kind of hard to eat. So like he's getting her very far away from the prohibition. Interesting how protective Adam is of Chava. Correct me here. I think I heard this. In the modern day now, the feminists have a term they called mansplain. Am I right?
Mansplaining.
Where women feel that sometimes men are patronizing and overly covetous, and they have to like put it in terms that women can understand. So they would say that Adam is mansplaining, arguably for the first time in history, to Chava here, and he means well, but we know, and this is familiar territory. We know it's going to lead to a few problems that we all kind of still suffer from. Yes,
I can probably preempt the problems. If she touched it, she didn't die. Then obviously, if you eat it, you won't die either. I could see that coming.
Yeah, sure.
What I was gonna ask was, why couldn't he just, if he's at a crazy high level, just say that Hashem said X and give it over correctly, and then say, but I, as your husband, will add that you should not touch it. And
Ellie,
be blunt about it, saying like,
Ellie, you're typically perceptive, as I find you are with many of our topics that we go through, and that's going to be exactly the punchline of the Brisa. You hit the nail on the head. So the idea of making fence, always good. This one didn't quite end as expected, not less than desirable. Right? There's something that they call the fall from grace. That's what we're dealing with here. Nothing less. The problem was exactly as you say, is that the problem was not making the fence. The problem was not being honest about it. He should have said, well, Hashem said this, and I'm adding this. And let's be really clear about what's DeRabbi, what's DeRabbi, and what's a chumrah. So we know how to gauge these things, and we know what we're dealing with. But to misrepresent the reality, to misrepresent what Hashem said, even if you're doing it l'shem shamayim, it's dangerous. Yeah, so that's going to be one of the meta punchlines here. We're going to get to that. It's going to take a while. I'm not even sure we're going to get there tonight, so it's fine that you preempted it, so at least we're not puzzling over it on Shabbos. But okay, here's what happens. He wanted to protect himself and Chava from approaching the tree, even by touching it. The truth is, I just qualify this. That last verse was not Adam speaking to Chava. It was Chava speaking to the snake. In defense, she's saying, well, we can't do this. It's one of the commentaries called the Ben Avraham, who says, well, why did she say that? Where'd she get that from if Adam himself, who had heard from Hashem what the mitzvah was, hadn't told her? So that's why the Brisa assuming that this is really Adam. These are really Adam's original words.
Is that the conclusion we come to at the end?
I didn't hear you, Yitzchak Chaim.
Is that the conclusion that we come to at the end? That we say that it was Adam's words?
Well, it's a side point. It's not certainly not any focus in the Brisa, but it's the Brisa's assumption. Clearly, because the pasuk unquestionably is Chava speaking to the snake, but the Brisa is asserting that it was Adam speaking to Chava. How did we put all that together? Well, Chava wouldn't have said it had Adam not told her. That's the connection. I think it's reasonable. I think it's a pasuk pshat kind of explanation. Yeah, and that kind of set the plan for the Satan, the Nachash, Hainu Malach HaMavis, right? All these forces to go into action. But Osa Shah Haya Nachash Rasha. At that moment that Hashem spoke to Adam and Adam spoke to Chava, so the snake, the evil serpent, was present and overheard everything being said. Natal Eitza Belibo. So he cooked up a plan. Amar Hoil ve'eni yachol lachshilas Adam, elich v'achshilas Chava. Since I can't ensnare Adam, I will go and ensnare Chava. Why can't he? And don't think this is a sexist Brisa. He can't because if he uses his trick on Adam, Adam knows that Hashem never commanded not to touch. It's more easy to get to the Chava who got the lie, and which is exactly the heart of this whole Brisa. People are vulnerable when they're working with half-truths. And so that's why he went after. It wasn't necessarily because of her inherent nature. At this time, even if we hold Nosson, Das, and Kalalaya, which is a principle that Chazal accept by women, that the women, their minds are not, they're more vulnerable, they're more open to men's manipulation, which we see in history is a statement that's quite supported by evidence. But that seems to be only after the Chet. Before the Chet, there's no indication that Chava was any less formidable a person than Adam, but she just didn't now have all the information, so that made her vulnerable, right? It's so interesting too. Lies make us so vulnerable. The minute you're in a lie, the minute you have to navigate. It leads to secret. It leads to all kinds of things. There's so much better off in life if you could be like, Tochel Kabaro, the inside's like the outside, transparent. That's the better way to go. Usually, often, not always, but lies are found out, and in sometimes really ugly, unpleasant ways. Well, here's one example, arguably the first in history. So he entraps Chava. What are you going to say?
So did Nashim Dadot Kal Nashim Dad? I don't know how you pronounce it, but did it apply then also?
I'm suggesting that it only kicked in after the Chet. It's part of Chava's punishment. Also, but you don't see indication that she had that quality necessarily before the Chet. I'm suggesting, that's my suggestion. I don't have a backup for that.
Yes, I was wondering.
I'm just suggesting, and that would be that seems to fit the logic of the Bryce up until now. But again, it's a theory, not a fact.
I understand. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, you look. It's a sugi comes up. It's the Gemara at the end of Kiddushin mentions the idea. It's one of the reasons why we're more strict if they're one man can't be secluded with two women, whereas one man with two women is a problem, but one woman and two men is okay under everything else being equal, right? Because Nashin Das and Kalalai. And Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai and his son had to go leave the base medrash because his wife could be tortured by the Romans. She knew where they were at that time, and because she could be easily broken, so then they had to go hide in the cave where she wouldn't know their whereabouts. It's another example of how it's used. Gemara Shabbos Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. Yeah.
I hate to go meaning this is regarding the subject, but can they be held responsible then if Nashim doesn't call it? It's if one dressed like immodesty, for example, their lights are mined, and therefore they're persuaded by the person who maybe.
Well, I think like all innate qualities, it doesn't get any of us off the hook. It means that Kadosh Baruch Hu might, in the final judgment, give us a little more slack because it's harder for some of us. because we have like sort of an innate, challenge in that way. So, okay, but doesn't mean that we're, the Torah is still the Torah. Some people have just bigger struggles than others. Hi, Jeremy, welcome back. Nice to see you, or nice to see your name. Your name is up in lights. Okay, so we are, Jeremy, if you have a Avos Rabbi Nosson in hand, we are in the middle of the 5th Brisa in the first chapter of Avos Rabbi Nosson. We're learning about Adam and Chava tonight and what went wrong and how Adam, you want to say something?
I was just going to say, okay.
Oh, great. Great. Welcome aboard. Okay, so the snake now approaches Chava after Adam unwittingly set the stage for her fall by giving her, she's not playing with a full deck, not through no fault of her own. She didn't get the right message from Adam. So this is the snake now. Halach v'yashav etzla v'hir b'sicha ima. The snake went and schmoozed with her. Started talking about this and that. That's how it works, right? You start up a conversation, one thing leads to the next, right? And that's the power of persuasion, right? And the whole concept here is to relax her defenses before getting to his real objective. To be careful. I mean, talk about building a fence. This is exactly why we sicha alter b'sicha me'isha, which we're going to get to soon enough. It's in the first chapter of Pirkei Avos 2, not to talk excessively with women. Well, you start casually flirting, and one thing leads to the other. It's exactly the problem. Flirting breaks down our defenses, right? I mean, among many other issues. There's another really good point here. This is a side point too, but it's in some of the commentary. The article is just great. It's got all these gems here. So I'm going to try. I'm not going to do everything. I'm trying to study it in advance and bring you, like I read it all, so you don't have to, kind of a thing. So some of the highlights here. So it has a question that pertains here and certainly elsewhere as well. Exactly how did this conversation take place between the snake and Chava? What was their mechanism of communication? Do you ever wonder about that? Right? Or you just picture it like we saw growing up too many cartoons. So, the concept of animals speaking to people, I saw Winnie the Pooh, so what's the big deal? Right? No, but there's a question, like, how did this actually work? Technically, I mean, we know that it's one of the miracles that Bilam's donkey was capable of speech, right? That was that was the anomaly that it could speak. So why do we take for granted that the snake could somehow speak? So here are a couple different answers. There's one opinion, this is in the Medrash in Farim Rabbah, that before being cursed, he had, we know this is famous, he had a lot of human qualities. He had an upright posture, he had hands, he had feet, he had very, very human, and among his human qualities was the power of speech. There's another opinion, this is in Pirkei DeRabbi Eliezer, that it wasn't the snake speaking at all. He, like other forces in the world, had a malach, had a patron angel, and that angel did all the speaking. And the third view, the one I find very interesting, Rabbeinu Ephraim brings this, says that, no, none of the above, rather Chava, don't forget, Adam and Chava were not your average people. I mean, they were on the highest possible level, something that we can't fathom. Chava could speak snake. You remember Shlomo Melech could do this trick. He could speak to the birds. When two people had an argument over whose land, certain plot of land belonged to, Shlomo simply went over to the trees and asked them, and they told him. So
are they even cultural
on some objective plane. Good question. Shlomo Melech kind of broke the rules. Apparently, he did it his way. But he had these powers, so evidently these powers are possible, and so that's the suggestion.
I wanted to ask a more serious question.
The snake was an animal and was communicated like animals communicate to one another, but Chava could speak it. She was a polyglot.
Rabbi, again, the first answer, the third answer, I definitely relate to the most. Like that's the one I would be.
I mean, it's of the three answers, it's the most fun.
No, but yeah, but it also makes the most sense because we are taught that we have all the instincts of the different animals within us, and
right,
it's very feasible to me that one.
And we're taught that Adam and Chava are on some extraordinary, almost superhuman level. So this certainly would fit that. I cut you off. Go ahead.
It would make sense to me. But the first answer, can you remind me what that was again? I remember having a really big problem with it.
And thank you for being so meticulous and getting all the details down. That's my encouragement. Eitan also takes notes. To try to get all these pieces down. They're. I mean, it's very entertaining.
I'm not taking notes.
But it's also
I'm
really
notes
wonderful, and it's good to keep track of all this. The first answer was from Dvarim Rabbah. It said that the snake had human-like powers. He had 2 feet that he walked on, and he had the capacity to speak like people.
Right. So then I would wonder. Firstly, Adam looked through all the animals, and he didn't find anyone that was enough to him, and you would have thought the snake was human-like, then it should have been the highest candidate, and for some reason that wasn't adequate. So to me, that's a bit of a pella. But also,
Good point.
my understanding is that some people hold that human beings, one of the main, or it's not the main thing that distinguishes human beings from animals, is our ability to express concept in speech. The other is to turn an idea into speech, which is what we're referring to with the snake's ability.
Absolutely.
So
it wouldn't make sense to then 2 distinct categories. There's a dover and there's a domain. We are dovrim. We are capable of this complex speech. I can have a complex thought somehow manifested in my words and chuck it over to your brain through speech, and you somehow get it too. That's
right. So before the sin, snakes were bechlal humans as well. What does that mean?
Well, we don't know. But the fact that there are 3 different opinions means there's ambiguity.
Yeah.
We're humans. No. Whatever it is, they're not humans, but they're human-like, according to that one opinion. Yeah.
But
okay.
So that one opinion wouldn't agree with speech being the distinguishing factor between humans and animals?
That's one possibility. A second possibility is, no, in general, speech distinguishes human beings, and before the sin, the snake had this capacity too as an extraordinary exception. We have exceptions to the rules in other areas in life. Why not here too?
Well, just because my understanding is that we're defining a human by his ability to speak. And if you're going to do that, then you must also define the snake as being a human if he had the ability to speak before the sin.
I'm not agreeing that that's inevitable. I think that's a possibility, and maybe it was human-like before the sin. I'm also suggesting that no,
unless you're going to put another criteria.
The snake, the Hashem changed the rules with the snake. It was neither human nor animal-like. It was its birya b'fnei atzma. It was its own creature.
So in what way is it not human? Okay, fine. Yeah,
I want to suggest we should do this a little bit. You and I like to spar. We go back and forth a lot, and it tends to dominate.
like to spar.
So don't think we should do. Don't think we, in general, in this format, I don't think we should do too much. Meaning a little bit, but not. I think we should stop after a certain point.
Yeah, say it.
Okay. Yeah, fine.
Just one question I had regarding what you said. Maybe tell me if it's not a relevant question, but when you said that Adam and Chava were on a level where they could speak to a snake, all these things, and we give him a lot of credit. We say, Adam, for example, was equal to all the people who came after him spiritually.
Right. Correct.
Hashem created him that way. How can he take credit for?
Who said he did? Who said he took credit? That was simply the fact.
Meaning, yeah, but Hashem, it's Hashem gave him. It's okay, you're spiritually powerful. Okay, said it. You gave it to him.
Right, it's true. I think you're right, and that's one of the reasons why he's not one of our moral role models. I mean, we recognize his stature, his greatness, especially before the sin. He stood from the heaven to the earth, and kol hakavod. But on the other hand, there's not a lot of the same discussion. I mean, you'll find, you could write volumes and volumes on Rabbi Akiva, who's much more of a role model for us because he's human. I mean, in a way that we relate to, and so on. Adam, like you say, was created in a certain way. He didn't have to earn it in the same degree. I mean, Rabbi Akiva was mamish bare knuckle, grassroots, build him up by the, by the ankles, to the top. Okay, well, that's great for us to know about. Adam, he's like from another world, almost. So yeah, you're right. It was easy for him until it wasn't.
In addition to that, meaning, and this is you tell me from. I feel like I'm this is nonsense I'm thinking. For example, when I ask this kind of question, I feel a little bit bad for asking it, because I'm like, I feel like we should be treating them. I should be treating them with a kind of respect, and therefore, me thinking like, oh, Hashem just gives to them, like meaning I almost feel like guilty of asking that kind of question. Like, so should I feel guilty about it, or should I be like, no, ask
No,
any
I don't
question?
think so. I think Chazal encourage us. Chazal present the shortcomings of everybody, including some of the greatest tzaddikim of all times, as a didactic, intentional tool to teach us. Moshe Rabbeinu, for us, in this week's Parsha, in Parshas Chukas, next week for you, when is that going to change? Anybody know when you're going to catch up to us? Okay, well, anyway, Parshas Chukas, Moshe Rabbeinu does something wrong at that rock and can't enter Eretz Yisrael. And everybody analyzes that. And I mean, Rashi points out, of course, that the reason why it's highlighted is actually to Moshe's credit, that we should know that he didn't go into Eretz Yisrael because of his own sin, not chas v'sholom, that he sinned like the rest of the generation, which you might have thought otherwise, right? So on the one hand, he is sort of removed and above and beyond everybody else, but on the other hand, he's human and sins, and okay, so does everybody. There's no tzaddik in this world that doesn't sin, and we're meant to relate to that and learn from it. And if we can't discuss it, we'll never get to learn Musar from any of these things. I'm going to continue in the text. So he sits down and strikes up a conversation with her. Amar la, im linigia at omeres tziva leinu hakadosh baruch hu. If what you say is true, that even with regards to touching, Hashem has commanded us to avoid the tree of knowledge of good and evil. Hareini no gebo veini meis. Just watch. I'm going to touch it. I'm not going to die. Afat in tigibo iat mesa. You can touch it too. You're not going to die. What do you do at that exact point? Amad v'naga be'ilan biyadav uvaraglav v'irtio ad shenashru perosav la'aretz. He stood up, touched the tree with his hands and feet, and shook it until its fruit fell off and dropped to the ground. I'll point out here that there are different midrashim that tell this happens in Shas, especially by pivotal episodes like this one. Where you have multiple versions, not all in sync with one another. There's one version, some differences. So the fact that he touched it so thoroughly, hands and feet, he just put his whole body into the act, shows that, like this is to make a point to Chava. He's fine for doing this. She can certainly follow. There's the Brisa doesn't say that Chava touches the tree. But we have other sources that say that she did. Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer, for example. There's a Medrash in Bereshis Rabbah that says that not that she touched the tree on her own volition, but that the snake pushed her into the tree. I think that version is the most famous. Whatever happened, the Nachash has made his point, right? And he's going to wind up and say, look, you didn't die when you touched the tree. It's going to be totally fine to eat from it too. That's clearly.
Why didn't he? Can he not eat from it himself? Like set the example again.
Stay with it. You're 2 steps ahead of us as usual, Eli. So stay with us. V'yesh omrim lo naga bo kol ikar. There is an opinion that he didn't touch it at all. Ella kevan shera'ahu oso ilan. Rather, as soon as the tree saw him approach, it's a wild idea, this opinion, because once the tree saw him approaching, hayat soveach alav v'amarlo. The tree yelled, shouted at him saying, Rasha al tigabi, you evil one, do not touch me. Get your claws off of me. There's a question, is this actual speaking, metaphorical? Oh, it's something, right? Was it just the dropping of the trees, the fruit from the tree that conveyed that message? It was as if the tree said this. Okay, different interpretations. And how do we know that the tree said this? Shnei Amar, there's a pasuk in Tehillim, Al tevo eni regel gaiva v'yad r'shaim al tinideni. All this is as it stated, let not the foot of arrogance come to me, and let not the hand of the wicked move me. So the pasuk is telling us we want, a good soul doesn't want any truck with any connection with wicked people, and even trees, metaphorically, don't even want the nachash to go near him. Al tevo eni regel gaiva v'yad r'shaim al tinideni. Don't go near the wicked. good message. You guys have that in Korach coming up, right? Tov l'tzadik, tov l'shcheno, oy l'rasha, oy l'shcheno. We're going to see from the juxtaposition of Korach together with Dasan and Aviram, if you haven't already gone through that. Now, in the middle of the story, and we won't finish it all tonight, the whole episode with Adam and Chava, but okay, we're taking our time, and I'm kind of letting you lead us somewhat too. I mean, I could also do this in such a way where I don't give opportunity for our discussion, but especially since we're such a small group, I think we should and could, and I have no problem. I enjoy it. But you'll give me feedback if you would prefer that, I'd be more disciplined and stay on topic more. Anyway, now the Bryce has the sixth section that's going to interrupt. We interrupt this entertaining story of Adam and Chava and the serpent to bring you a parallel story that quotes this pasuk. Chazal do this, right? That pasuk that actually teaches us a totally different episode, different time in history, parallel to a Gemara in this case in Gittin. And here it goes. Davar acher al tevoeni regel gaiva. Another explanation, let not the foot of arrogance come to me. Who's that referring to? Why, none other than Ze Titus, Harasha, Shinishchaku Atzmosav. This refers to the wicked Titus, who's credited with destroying the second base of Mikdash. And he's referred to by the Brisa, let his bones be ground up. We have those kinds of statements about certain Rishaim. There's a similar statement about Hadrian. Another statement, Yeshu is referred to as, Yesh Oso Haish, that guy. Certain wicked people are referred to in a pejorative term. Shahaya Mora Biyado Vaya Make Al Gabe Mizbeach. What did Titus do? He pointed accusingly with his hand. This is after he finally entered the compounds of the Beis Hamikdash, and he pointed accusingly with his hand, presumably to the heavens, to Hashem, and he banged on the altar, Makal Mikabeh Mizbeach va'omer, famous line, Locus, At Melech, Va'ani Melech, Bo Va'aseh Imi Melchama, he said to Hashem. And by the way, I don't know if anybody's paying attention to anything we've said tonight. Just good advice. This is just from me because I love you all. Don't try this at home, kids. The following line. Wolf, wolf, he's shouted up to the creator of the universe. You're a king and I'm a king. Come and wage war with me. Oh my. This is not clear which the chronology is. It's not clear. This Brisa doesn't bring all the details of the story. We have more of them in the Gemara and Gittin. He brought in two prostitutes. They spread out a Sefer Torah, did unspeakable things there with them, and stabs the parochis, if you remember. Hashem makes a miracle and it bleeds, and he perceives that he's somehow killed the sovereign of the universe, and many other details. Locus. Okay, we're talking about somebody, I guess you could refer to him as a Gaivitic person, somebody of immense arrogance. He comes with, that's how it works with Rishaim a lot of the time. They claim to be noble, they claim to have their own philosophical point of view, and he's coming against Hashem. I've got my heart in the right place. You're the one who's corrupt. Why? What's his claim? He says, how many bulls were slaughtered on you? His meta argument is all the money you've wasted of these poor Jews. This altar and all these ceremonies. They could have gone to Bermuda. Kama ofos nimlaku alecha. How many birds they do malika with the thumb action, the killing of the birds. Kama yenos nischu alecha. Delicious wine just poured right down the mizbeach. Hashem, come on. Wine libations. Kama b'samim kitru alecha, all that good smelling incense that they caused just to go up in smoke, all wasted, he said. I mean, I just hear so many people today criticizing tradition, like you guys, all that waste you guys do, all these criticisms. This is sadly contemporary, a lot of these criticisms of Hashem and his mitzvahs. Titus continues, Atahu shemachari veskol haolam. You're destroying the entire world, he asserts. Yeah, that's what he asserts, because you're consuming all all of this, but you do nothing to protect your people. And look, I'm in the process of destroying them and the base of Mikdash, he claims. Shinemar, and he quotes a pasuk in Yeshaya, Hoi Ariel, Kiryas Chana David, Svu Shana al Shana. It says in the pasuk, "Oh Ariel." Ariel is one of the terms for. It's actually another name for the Mizbeach in the first temple, but it's used sometimes generally about Yerushalayim. I think they misnamed the settlement, a large settlement in the Shomron of Eretz Yisrael, Ariel. Ariel is very distinct. I mean, the one place it comes in Psukim is here, and it's clearly about Yerushalayim. It's oddly named Yishuv, but okay. Oh, Ariel, in the city where David encamped, you add sins year after year so that sheep are being axed. That's what he's trying to claim. That's his argument, is a distorted reading of the pasuk. But okay, the real context of the pasuk is the people are being axed because the sins are they're bringing korbanos as a smokescreen, as a cover-up for their terrible sins. But that's really what the pasuk is talking about. But Titus is twisting it for his own ends, for his own manipulation, and is thereby the Bleiweiss is asserting another icon of pure arrogance. I'll remind you, the Gemara in Gittin says he does, in the end, destroy the base of Mikdash. That's not what Josephus says, but that's another story. And ultimately, a little gnat flies in his nostril and winds up taking him down. So the one who accuses Hashem of, and feels that he's murdered Hashem and conquered Hashem, so the same Gaividic person is taken out by a little tiny creature. Because I can't resist a good tangent, I'm going to share a modern story that draws very much on this Breiss, maybe familiar, and if not, take notes. This is the one that I read to the yeshiva at the end of Leil Shabbos. I spoke after the Poland trip, and I was the keynote speaker on that Shabbos, and I spoke about, we saw a lot of people who weren't necessarily role models in their reaction to the Shoah. I honed in on two great figures in modern day who are people to learn from. The first I spoke about was the Klausenberg Sans Rebbe, and the second was the Panovitcher Rebbe, both of whom lost almost everybody and came and rebuilt. And we know the Panovitcher Rebbe was undaunted, was an effective person, built Panovitch, built immensely all over Israel, was responsible for the establishment of what we think of as the Haredi world to a large degree, fundraised. He had apparently a keen knack for fundraising. And stop me, did I just bring this up recently? This sounds suddenly familiar that I might have mentioned this. Doesn't sound familiar? Great, okay. So here's what happens. He's on a fundraising trip, and they have a stopover in Rome overnight. And it's winter and cold and raining, and he's accompanied by one of his. He was an older man at this point, and so he had somebody, a shamish, come and travel with him on his rounds. And they got in, and it was usually Eitan, you might identify with this after traveling. You just want to get to your destination already after you travel. They wanted to get to the hotel in this event, but the Panovitcher Rebbe said, "No, I have some unfinished business." And so his shamish said, "Okay." So instead of going to the hotel, they went to the Arch of Titus that today stands in Rome, a relic of history that concretizes and immortalizes the destruction with the images at the top of the relief where the Romans are carrying off the menorah and the other Klei Kodesh of the base of Mikdash that they've just destroyed. And Rav Kahaneman said, "I have some unfinished business to take care of." He says, and very much with the words of Titus in his mind, "Locus, locus, you're a king and I'm a king, come make war." And then, and I should add also, in his arrogance, Titus yelled up, "Aye, Elokeima, where's their God? I don't see him." So now the Panovitcher Rav stood by the arch in the rain. He adjusted his kapota and his hat, and he said, Titus of Russia, wicked Titus, look what happened. You dragged my hapless people out of our land 2 millennia ago. You led them into Gullus. Ayeka, Titus, where are you today, Titus? What's become of your infallible empire that was supposed to last forever? Titus, Mirzenen Nochdo, Avu Bisdu. That's the Yiddish. In English, he said, we're still here. Where are you? My delivery was better that night in the base medrash, and I had something I was going to say afterwards, but I was impassioned, and like everybody was quiet, and I was screaming this. The setting was right. And I guess the term is I dropped the mic. I just walked away, and there was like a stunned silence, and then Baruch. It worked. Yeah, it was a good moment.
Very Shiur of me.
Yeah, wouldn't you think? Yeah. I mean, it was spontaneous on my part. It just worked, But it helps when you have good material, Thanks, Panovich or Rabbi, for giving me that setup. We have a few minutes. Let's continue. The Brisa resumes the narrative of the Nachash and Chava. Chava apparently is still not convinced. He's gone through this whole exercise. He's touched it. Maybe she's touched it. Maybe she hasn't, but there's not winning her over yet. He says, "Im la'achila atomeres tziva aleinu HaKadosh Baruch Hu." If you say it's primarily eating that HaKadosh Baruch Hu has said, and that He's commanding us about that, right? Even though, Adam included both the touching and the eating. Logically, she could deduce that, okay, if touching's a problem, eating is certainly a problem. She can figure that out. And that's why the Nachash is now, he realizes that that's her skepticism. Hareini ochel mimenu ve'eni meis. He says, and this is Eli, you just asked about this. Look, I'm going to eat from it, and I'm not going to die. Now, he wasn't afraid to do this. And there are different interpretations as to why. If it's poisonous, he's not human, so he's not concerned about dying. Yeah. Okay, I think that's the shot. So he says, if I can eat from it, I will, and I didn't die, you should eat from it, and you won't die. Ma amra Chava b'daita. What did Chava say in her own mind? She thought to herself, Amra Chava b'daita, she said to herself, Kol advarim shepakadani Rabbi mitchila sheker him. Everything that my master, she referred to Adam as my master, my Rabbi, it's false. The snake has just demonstrated to me that you could touch it, you could eat it. Lefi she'ein Chava kora la'adam arisha mitchila ela Rabbi. She actually referred to him as Rabbi initially. Interestingly, he was the source. He conveyed the words of Hashem to Chava. Lefi she'ein Chava, right? She's master. Miyad natla va'achla v'nasna la'adam va'achal. Boom, boom, boom. Like the Medrash says it with, the Brisa says it with utter rapidity. If you blink, you miss it. So she said, "Wow, I guess he lied to me." Right then and there on the spot, the Brisa says she took from the fruit, she ate it, she gave it to Adam, and he ate. Skipping a lot of the steps, she had to cry. We know in the other versions she cried. There's a whole discussion. But in this rendition, it was a swift fall. Right? Blink your eye and you miss it. It's not our discussion how she persuaded him. You could look it up in Bereshit Rabbah. And then it says, Shinemar v'tera ha'isha kitova eitz lemachal v'chitzava hu leinayim. And it says the woman perceived that the tree was good for eating. It was a delight to the eyes. She took it, she gave it to her husband, and he ate it. That's all the pasuk. Now, obviously, the question is, like, how do we know that Chava ate from the tree? How did she know that it was good for eating? Right? It must clearly be that she ate and then also gave the fruit to, it's filling in the blanks what the psukim don't say, but they certainly imply. We should probably end here, but I'm tempted. I want to go on, but I'm not going to. The next bit is going into the 10 curses that Chava and then all of her kind, women, are going to have to endure through all history, that are very much Mida Keneged Mida. We'll have to keep this for Sunday.
Rabbi, I'm really, really loving this
Also,
shiur.
one second. One of the outstanding questions here that we have to resume then is that it would seem that she's only persuaded when the Nachash uses the eating argument, in which case that whole fence that Adam put up, and we thought it was all because he said about touching, doesn't seem to be a problem. We'll have to get to that too. Clearly, it was the whole setup. Well, I'll say it right now, because I don't want to lose the thought either. Had the snake just started saying, "Oh, we could eat from it, I'll eat from it, you could eat from it," she wouldn't have gone there. She needed to be taken down slowly the path of persuasion. First, by going through the process of touching, and she wasn't buying it still, but it was sort of like opening her up. And so that by the time he settles down for the clincher and eats from it, she was persuaded. So you really needed a double punch, and that's where really that thing goes back to Adam's mistake of not telling Chava the whole story. Hashem never told you not to touch the tree. Yeah, Ellie, what were you going to say?
Firstly, thanks a lot. That was a really, really fantastic shiur, Bemet. Thank you.
Thank you.
I wanted to just ask, it's a bit off topic, why didn't Hashem speak to Chava directly as well? Like if they were on the same level, which I would have thought they are, I don't know, whatever. She should at least have been on the level of a prophet.
It's an excellent question. It also occurred to me, and I saw nobody who addresses it. I can hypothesize. And again, it's before the sin, so it's not like she's subordinate to Adam at that stage either. But,
okay.
Yeah.
What would you propose?
Even if they're equal in terms of stature, still there's a role division. Right? Adam initially was created du parts Sufi, he's got the two faces, he's a combination of the two, but he still is identified as Adam, and he retains that identity afterwards, where Chava is a new being. So there's something about being the primordial Adam that makes him somehow have that connection to a Kadosh Baruch Hu. So that's his role. They had divided roles, equal but separate. That's my intuition. And I'm sure there's more that you could say on that. Good. Call it an evening. Yeah. I'm coming back if you want to join in 15 minutes, and we'll do some Gemara.
Thanks.
Great.
Thanks.
All right. Great. Thanks for coming. Bye.